Hey, Shawn G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy. Oh, hold on just a second. We've got a caller. Hello, this is Shawn with Chasing Truth. Who have I got on today?
Hey, Shawn, this is Greg. How you doing?
Hey, Greg, what's going on?
Not a whole lot.
Hold on just a second. Let me adjust this volume real quick. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
I was visiting a small town in Virginia, and it's got a pretty interesting story I thought you might like to hear.
Sure, let's hear it, man. You've always got the best stories out there.
Clifton Forge, Virginia.
Clifton Forge, Virginia. I've heard of it.
It's just a small railroad town, and there's been some shows done about it and a few things. The interesting thing about the town is it's actually the street level actually had an underground to it, and the underground had shops and stores and the whole works underneath this area. It's kind of built against a mountainside and the railroad, and there wasn't a lot of room to expand at the time, so they built this underground area, and it's a creek that flows. When I went there, I actually went and visited that area, and there's a creek that flows from one end of the town to the other end underneath the city, and it's been flooded and abandoned over the years, and but some of the stories were back in the early days. There was people killed, and some strange events that have happened down there, and then there's been several people that claim to have experiences down there. And when I visited, you can go down and it's pretty spooky because, you're following the creek bed underneath the city, and there's these old storefronts from like the 1900s. And, where the water's gotten up, it's, destroyed some of the storefronts, and there's like debris in some of them, and, it's just really strange. But one of the areas that's supposed to have a demon, or very bad energy, in it. And we went down, and they didn't give exact location of it, but according to the way they described it and all, we think we were in it. And, it's, I didn't see anything or really experience anything when I was down there, but it was very cold and pretty spooky.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a haunted tunnel in Lexington, Virginia.
Oh yeah, I've heard a ton of haunted tunnel stories. Tell me about this one in Lexington, Virginia.
Well, they say you can hear little kids and people in the tunnel, and it's actually, you can still walk into it to this day, but it's been abandoned, from years ago. And that was supposed to be in during the Civil War. It was some activity with the soldiers and all that from back in, and killings involved, and some of the fighting. They used it for shelter and to hide, and fought back and forth because they were trying to control the railroads, and that was one of the main.
So it was used for possibly slave transport back in the day, back in the Civil War?
I'm sure it was. I hadn't heard specifically slaves, but I know it was a lot of Civil War activity where they were at the time trying to, stop the railroad, and there was a lot of battles around that area.
Oh yeah.
And
well, hey, Greg, do you have any more activity around your spot? Last time I talked to you, you had a little bit of a happening outside your house there, probably about a month and a half ago.
It's been fairly quiet. Like I say, I don't really go messing around too much at night. It's probably been a week ago. I heard something walking around again out there, but it didn't really do much around. Just I could clearly hear the footsteps.
Oh yeah,
and it's.
So was it louder? Was it a heavy footstep, like from a bigger type animal, or was it like a large dog, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, they were heavier type footsteps. Like I say, it's kind of difficult to make something out at a distance. It definitely sounded like it was on 2 feet. It wasn't like you can hear the difference between I've got bears and deer and all that, and you can kind of tell the difference between something like out walking and something that sounds more like a human walking.
Oh yeah, the step cadence, from thump thump thump.
Yeah,
thump.
the stride and
the stride,
the distance in between the noise.
Oh wow! When's the last time you actually? Folks, if you don't know who the caller in is he is one of the resources that our friend Dark Waters has told some of his stories about on a lot of his YouTube and at I Am Dark Waters stories. Some of these come directly from this particular guest right here. So when was the last time you actually saw one of those fox creatures? For whatever reason, the time frame escapes me.
I'd say it's been close to a year since I've actually, seen one.
Okay.
Like I say, the activity ramped up there for a while, and then, it kind of gradually started to go away, and now it's just from time to time I hear, something, but they're not really, messing with me like they were.
All right.
And plus, I think I cut down all the trees too around my property.
Oh
I cut 68 trees that was big enough to log, not counting the little trees and smaller stuff. I cleared out.
So what was the reason behind you cutting down those trees?
I come in one night and I was visiting my neighbor, and right behind my house, I heard something jump from one tree to the next. You could tell it was pretty large, and it's, 30 foot between the two trees.
Yeah.
And you could hear it. Like I say, it was pitch dark, and like I say, I don't usually go messing around after dark, but I had to eat dinner with my neighbor, and decided I'd stay a little bit longer than I expected to. And as I was coming up the back steps to my porch, I heard it jump from one tree to the other, and you could hear the claws when it jumped from one tree and on the bark, and then land in the other. And the trees were about 80 foot tall. They were really big oaks. And with the skyline, you could make out the tops of the trees, and you could see them. When it left the first tree, you could see it shake, and then when it hit the second tree, you could see it shake.
Well, when you had those things logged, cut down, did you actually go to investigate on those trees that were logged if they had those claw marks that you heard?
Yeah, we looked at them, and there wasn't. There was bark missing, but there wasn't like, you see a bear dig on a wall or something. There wasn't that type of.
Yeah, no,
it was just bark missing.
Just bark missing, no scuff marks. So was the tree at that portion of that tree that was the bark was missing? Was it a live part of the tree, not a dead section of the tree, or?
Yeah, it was the main trunk of the tree.
Okay.
I'd say it was probably about 50 to 60 feet off the ground. It was towards the top of the tree. And, you could, like I say, there were chestnut oak, and their bark is kind of loose anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a whole lot to rip the bark off of them.
Oh, okay. So more or less,
you know what I mean?
What I'm thinking of is this thing jumped from tree to tree instead of using its claws to really get intact. Really hang on. It was using its appendages like arms or legs or whatever you want to call it, besides just claws. Is that what you're coming to?
Yeah, that's what I would assume. From what we've seen of it. And I went the next day and got a hold to some loggers, and within 2 days I had them logging them.
Oh, wow. So how long did it take them to clear out those logs, those trees to your satisfaction?
It was about 3 days that it took them to log the 68 trees. Like I say, they brought in equipment and our several trucks. It didn't take them that long. They had a big tractor with, bucket and stuff on it that had forks to load the logs.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 of them cutting. So, like I say, 68 trees. Didn't take that long to
really
cut them and haul them.
Oh.
They're professionals. They do it all the time.
Yeah, so did the activity that you were trying to get rid of, did it automatically halt right then and there once those trees were gone?
Well, the activity had really stopped or really slowed down where I hadn't been noticing like I had been. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was just once I realized they were in the trees, and I had trees all the way around me, I was just enough of that.
Wow. So, no more, one of the stories that may or may not be aware with the listeners right now that are aware of Dark Waters stories concerning a fox creature and the handlers. I think that's the name of the partial name of one of the stories. Have you seen or heard any stories or seen any accounts after the fact of those handlers coming in fully armed and in black dress?
Have I heard anything else from them? Or?
Yeah. Any kind of encounters with them again, or any other stories from other people saying, hey, there was some funky activity with these strange military type folks?
No, I haven't experienced anything else with them, or I haven't directly talked to anybody that has had. Like say, I'm in the middle of nowhere basically. Like say, it's a couple hundred acres behind me, a couple hundred acres next to me. There's like 2 houses within a few miles of me. I'm pretty isolated where I'm at.
Oh, okay. All right. Tell me a little bit about, you had now this is just me working from my memory. You had told me there was some sort of Indian site near your property. Is that true?
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Actually, it's a gas plant, and when they were excavating to build the gas plant, they started digging up all, bones and pottery and, artifacts. And they actually had, I guess it was people from the state at the time came in and, did their, excavation of it and, to find what they could find. And they recently did some more work down there, and it's some kind of statute or a rule. They had to put down these huge wood planks all over the whole ground to bring any equipment or anything in, because they can't disturb any of the ground or anything around it.
Oh, okay. So this is a state law or something like that that keeps them from disturbing the...
I don't know the reasoning. I would assume since they brought in, I'm talking like a couple acres worth of heavy timber.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen a job site or any reason why you need that on, solid ground.
That's wild. So, for the listeners that haven't heard, if you, do you want to talk any more about your encounters with these fox, dogmen, whatever you want to call them? What's your explanation with that? What do you call them?
I'm not really sure. I just pretty much call them things. I don't really have a name for them, or it's just I really don't know what they are or where they come from or anything like that. They're and I don't know if the ones I seen. Well, it was just the one I seen. I seen it twice, but it had others, or at least one other one with it, because I seen the eye shine from it.
Okay.
So, I don't know if it was a larger one or, the one I saw was about 5.5 foot tall, because it was next to my van, and it was right next to my bubble window at the corner of the van, so I could get I went out there after I talked to DW and got a measurement, and it, like I say, it wasn't fully stood up. It was still kind of bent over a little bit, but as best I could guess, with the tape measure and all, it was around 5.5 foot tall.
Yeah. Wow. So can you give me a little bit more description of what the fur looked like? What kind of eye color it had? Did it show any teeth, canines, or anything like that? Or was it more of a friendly posture kind of encounter?
Well, looking at it, it didn't act aggressive. It didn't show its teeth. It looked more curious than anything. Because it came to light when I was going to bed and the dog was barking and going off. Yeah. And I just grabbed the little light that I had near me. I had some bigger lights, but that's just to kind of look out in the driveway out the window. And I could see the eyes, and it was like an amber colored. Mm-hmm. But it was like an amber with a reflector behind it, because they were really reflective. Sort of like a deer's eyes when you shine on them. Yeah. It was that kind of reflective, but it was even more so than a deer. They were really highly reflective. I think that's why a lot of people think they see them glowing, because there's some light in the area, and the light's just picking up because they're really highly reflective.
So when you saw this particular encounter with this 5 foot plus creature next to your van, was this before or after you saw these men in black with heavily armed come in?
It was afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Within several days of that, I started getting activity, and this was a little over a week later. Because I was getting more and more activity at the time. Mm-hmm. And finally I seen one, and then after that, it was probably, I would say, close to a week after that. I was watching TV, and I had my tablet, like doing commercials and stuff. I was looking up Facebook and, forums, that type of thing. And at the corner of my eye, I seen something move, and I looked over, and from about the nose up, I could see what appeared to be the same one.
Yeah.
With the coloration, it looked like about the same one, and I didn't, like I say, it was looking right at me, and then it ducked, and I went out with the gun, and I didn't hear it run off. I don't know where it went. It just, I don't know what happened to it.
Okay. Did they ever act aggressive towards you during this? What has it been, about a year and a half since you started encountering these things? Have they ever acted aggressive towards you?
Well, they were running around and beating on my, like, what sounded like if you would take your hand and smack the side of my truck or van or something.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like they were doing. I don't know what their paws or hands are really. When it stood up, it had its hands kind of curled, or paws kind of curled back. It kind of stood up like a prairie dog is the best way I can describe it. How they'll kind of stand up with their arms kind of to the side with their, paws kind of curled in. It's how it was standing when it stood up and looked at me when I seen it out the window. And
okay. So
so I didn't.
Okay.
And I was more focused at its face because it was just so odd looking, and I guess I was a little bit in shock looking at it and was trying to just figure out what, because I'd had all this activity and knew that's what was causing it, and wasn't quite sure, so I was just really trying to.
Well, explain the lighting that what time of night did this encounter occur, and what kind of lighting was around your home at the time?
Well, like I say, I live way back in the mountains in the woods, and it was pitch dark outside, and there's little, I guess you call them a pin light that's, got the little double or triple A battery or double A battery in it.
Oh yeah.
It has those little LED beams that they're square when you focus them all the way out.
Mm-hmm.
You see the square beam. It was one of those type lights, and it was at the other side of my driveway where I had my van parked. So it was a little ways away, you know what I mean? So the square beam was pretty much just on its face, and but the light, when it first came out, I seen the side of it as it was moving, and it was crouched down pretty low, like a cat would crawl, and it was moving really fluent, like on the ground, really low, and then when it went around the tree that's next to my van, it stopped, and then it just stood up, and I was like, it just stood up, and I was trying to kind of gather what it was and what it was wanting, and the whole 9 yards at the same time. And I had seen when it first started coming out, I could see the eyes behind it, another set of eyes that were the same, yellowish, amberish color.
Yeah.
Behind it. But as far as I could tell, those eyes, it never moved closer or anything to me.
Oh, so when you had these sightings and encounters, was it mainly during the nighttime, or was it around dusk during the day, or was it streamed throughout the clock?
It seemed like it was like between 11 o'clock and maybe 3 o'clock is when I had the most activity at night. During the day, I couldn't hear it, and you can hear it. Like, I'm in the woods, so a lot of times if it's something up on the ridge or something that's so thick that you can't really tell,
Yeah.
and it's something at a distance, it's really hard to make out if it's a deer or if it's a, I've got bears, coyotes, foxes, bobcats. There's a little bit of everything running around. I took most of my cues from my dog, actually, because the way he was acting, I'd let him out, and he's a really big dog, and he's Arctic Tundra Wolf and Shepherd mix, and usually he just goes after anything out there. Well, during this time, he didn't want to go into the woods or. A lot of times I'd let him out, and he didn't even really want to go off the porch to go to the bathroom.
So he got pretty spooked, huh?
Yeah, he wasn't. Whatever it was, he didn't want to mess with.
Oh, the dogs that I've had in my life as pets, when they got pretty spooked or got a little agitated, the tuft of fur on the back of their necks would stand up on end. Did you see that with Jackson?
It was a couple times, but he really don't. He's a little bit different with the wolf team, I guess. He didn't, wasn't doing that. He was just real, leery and watching the woods as he'd go out. And, I didn't get a whole lot of the hair raising up and stuff like that when he was outside. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's in the daylight, so, full daylight, and he's in the yard. So I guess it wasn't, enough to spook him enough for his hair to stand up or anything like that.
So did Jackson ever get to the point where he would, leap off and act like he was a normal dog, just running out in the woods and chasing whatever the heck was moving?
Well, now, he'll go, he'll take off and, he's gone for a little while and then he comes back. So whatever it is, I guess he doesn't sense anything really troubling around right now. So, I just he's pretty smart, so I just let him kind of.
How big is Jackson? What kind of breed dog is he?
He's Arctic Tundra Wolf and European Shepherd.
So
he's like he's bigger than any police dog or anything you'll see.
Yeah.
He, with the Arctic Wolf and stuff in him, and the European Shepherds are bigger than an American German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And he's squared off. He doesn't have the slope back or none of that. He's got. His back legs might even be a little longer than his front legs. He's a big boy.
Big solid dog. Huh? So if I recall right, you were telling me one time he took off up in the woods and he didn't come back automatically when you try to wheel someone back. Is that true?
Yeah. I think there's some Bigfoot in the area. That was my initial thing, because I found trees bent over and trees pushed over in the corners of the fields, and trees pushed over the road beds, and they're a live tree, and looking at them, there hadn't been any weather or anything around at the times that the trees have been
loosen up
knocked
the dirt.
over.
Yeah. So how big a girth was these trees that were pushed over?
Usually they're probably 6 to 10 inches around. They wasn't really large trees, the ones that was pushed over, but they were pushed, and a lot of times it'd be one opposite the other, directly across from each other. They'd be pushed over towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it was crisscrossed.
Yeah.
And, there's a few that are bent over and wedged into another tree, that are 6 or 8 inches around, pretty good sized trees.
So it didn't have any outward signs of like deer rutting or anything like that on it, or missing bark and gouges?
No, there's no way a deer. There wouldn't no way a deer could do that.
Oh man, crazy.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid going up the mountains in Virginia, down the Appalachian mountain chain. I've never seen Bigfoot, and I've never had the encounter that you've had. Hey, folks, thanks for listening to this best of sample of some of my 5 years in doing this radio show podcast called Chasing the Truth. Please visit imdarkwaters.com, or you can email me at ShawnG@imdarkwaters.com. And my numbers and links are in the description below. God bless y'all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.